So, Patty, great episode today, as always, with Kyle Morgan talking about EBT. Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
that's one of those subjects I think a lot of our people are sort of like pushed to the side or we don't want to
Yeah,
deal with it. But I think Kyle has a really interesting approach
yeah.
that, can make it a real viable
A great way to
addition to
go after
people's
that.
business.
Great way to go after some specific verticals like grocery and C-stores and things like
Right,
that.
right.
And then in the questions in the field, I talk about next action steps, which I guess, frankly, maybe this is this is subjects that sound boring that aren't. Is that the
Right.
the
This is the
topic for
day
this
of that,
episode?
exactly,
Um,
because
Yeah, so we talk about kind of the key to productivity with whether you're recruiting agents or selling merchants. And I talk about that. Trust me, it's not as boring as it sounds. You'll get some tips out of that. And then Patty tells us about the insiders, which maybe was the most interesting
of the
headline.
boring topics, the most
Yeah,
interesting of
right.
the boring topics was cryptocurrency, and we've heard a lot of that's been in the news a lot, and so we touch on a few of those subjects. And our episode today is brought to you by NMI. You can find them on the web at nmi.com. So,
Awesome.
James, what do you say we get going?
Let's get going. Hey, everybody. Pat and I are here today with Kyle Morgan, who is the CEO and head of product at Mercantile Processing. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah, I think is this your third or fourth time on the podcast, there, Kyle?
I think it's our third. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few.
You're up there. You're up there
Yeah.
near the top of our frequent guest list. You always have interesting insights to share. So there, it's funny in our industry. We have a huge industry, but frankly, there's a lot of people who specialize, but there's not actually as many experts as you would think that kind of have a broad history with it. So we appreciate you joining us again. We're going to talk today about EBT and this idea of kind of government provided programs, which merchants qualify for it, and how to, put this into the payment processing mix. Before we dive into that though, Kyle, give us a little background for those that maybe didn't listen to the other two episodes. Give us the elevator pitch of kind of how you got into mercantile processing, and then also what led you to kind of put EBT into the mix of what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks for having us back. We always enjoy, sharing our, we always call it payment pals in the industry. Everybody shares some knowledge and we all try and benefit from it. So for me, I've been doing this 16 years now. I started when I was 21 in college, just a sales agent. We started to specialize in bank partners, got our first bank when I was 23, hired my first employee, kind of expanded from there. Most of our inbound channel is from financial institutions. We're the Maryland Bankers Association preferred provider. We do have some software ISVs we do some work for as well, but basically the reason EBT comes up is because we're doing, financial institutions are a great vertical to go after, except for the fact that you have to become an expert in a little bit of everything. So that's what we ended up doing. Specifically, we do a lot for community banks, which end up in a lot of rural areas. So food stamps, low income areas, stuff like that. You got to know EBT.
Yeah, that's true. Kyle, I was going to comment, you're a young whippersnapper. As everybody who listens to this regularly knows, I've been in the payment space for a really long time. And I just thought I'd set this up with a little bit of history. I remember when EBT was first becoming. And it was really hard, mostly it was state by state, and they used to have to create these state consortiums so that your EBT could travel from New York to New Jersey, for example. The government took the federal government took much longer to get into it. But what I think is really key that a lot of people, outside of our industry probably don't understand is that this whole EBT infrastructure was built on our card infrastructure.
Yep.
And that's why it works so well. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. But before we get into all the details of what you're doing, I'd really love, for you to sort of explain exactly what EBT is, what it is and what it isn't. It stands, just for everybody, it stands, of course, for electronic benefits transfer. But anyway, could you go beyond that a little bit, Kyle?
Yeah, so I'll speak a lot during this. The states that we do a lot of work in are Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. That's kind of our region.
Which is where I live.
Yeah, in your backyard.
Right.
Do a little bit in Pennsylvania, but so I know those states really well. But so electronic balance transfer is kind of where all these state benefits live. Now that being said, the most common that's pretty much in all 50 states is your food stamps.
Right.
So, back when I was in high school, I used to be a cashier and a produce clerk at a local Food Lion, and they would come in with the actual physical food stamps. They'd have to tear off those.
Tear them off and hand them over like bills.
Hand them
right?
over, and we count them and, do it all, match it, and the whole thing. And then you move to the card. Then they like we call it the SNAP card, which is the SNAP is the name of the program for food stamps and USDA, stuff like that. But so basically at its core function, EBT is going to be your food stamps. So pretty much every merchant provider, every state, food stamps is 100% EBT. Now, some states,
and those
like
are
Maryland,
state issued, right? I mean, the food stamps, although they're backed by the federal government, if I understand correctly, are issued actually by the states, right?
Correct. So it always gets a little fun and confusing because like my EBT has declined. Well, what state issued it? It's different than your bank. Now you're talking about state issued food stamps. So you no longer have an issuing bank. Now you have an issuing, state entity.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah. Good luck getting them on the line, especially on a Saturday.
Bureaucracy. I like that.
Yeah. So it's always that. But then in some states, they've added additional layers. So those same cards, I've seen those cards add a Visa or a MasterCard logo, and they'll put welfare checks or things along those lines. So they've layered additional layers on EBT in certain states to help then distribute the same kind of benefits, but across, if you're qualifying for food stamps, you likely qualify for welfare.
Right.
So why not just give them to you on the same card in the same account? Because again, these are also the consumers that are probably under or not banked either.
Right.
So we were sending them checks in the mail,
and then
they would
have
go
to
to a check casher and lose 1.5% on that. So it all layers in. Now, again, talk about two different states. Delaware doesn't do that. So Delaware, they're still direct depositing or sending out checks for welfare, and then they're giving out food stamps. So you gotta have to know your state, to understand what you can use the EBT for.
Right.
But in most situations, it's going to be food stamps.
And just so I clarify, just to sort of succinct that, basically the EBT is the account through which different benefits can be funneled. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct. Kind of think of it like the old Amex ESA, where it was always separate. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we put that on the merchant account. Now it's all blue, but you would have to put that number onto your VAR sheet, and then you would get funded by Amex separately. With EBT, it's still the same kind of way, where you have to put the EBT number on the VAR sheet, so that way the state will fund your merchant.
Gotcha.
It's not part of the merchant deposit. So that's the one other big thing. It's still funded by the state. It's usually 48-hour funding. But again, the merchants don't mind because they're not paying a percentage. So so that's a big thing for them. So they get funded by the state, and the state has their own funding protocol, stuff like that. But in general, 2 business days.
And so is the state paying the? I'm sorry, James, but if I could is the state paying the processing fees?
So the transaction fees are actually dictated by the merchant service provider.
Okay.
And then the rest of it, there's nothing else. So whatever we as the industry charge per transaction is all that merchant is going to pay for that transaction.
So there's still money to be made, is what I'm getting at, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And so we understand a little bit of what it is now. So electronic benefits transfer, we have the idea of the food stamps that go on to the EBT card. You talk about SNAP, which I believe is even what's the one that's specifically for families with children, I believe, as well.
WIC, isn't it? Women and infant children or something like that?
Yeah, some WIC states are on the EBT card as well. Some aren't. It depends on your state and how it's administered.
So the idea would be EBT is the electronic benefits transfer, and you're saying different government kind of entities and bureaucracies, to put it with Patti put it, they can put different benefits, government benefits, on this card, and then the consumer has this card. They can go and use it at different establishments that accept it. Yep. So I guess the next logical question would be, what types of businesses, what types of merchants can accept this form of payment? And how big of a deal is it to the merchant that they have a smooth EBT process if they're accepting it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's a niche that we kind of went after we started really learning about it. I'd say about 10, 12 years ago. We started realizing that, okay, this isn't just a big grocery chain thing. You know what I mean? The grocery chains are the ones who started it, but, the state actually approached us. The state of Delaware came to us for a contract. They said, listen, we want to put mobile credit card machines at every of these farmers markets. And so we actually ended up getting the contract for the state of Delaware to do all the farmers markets for EBT. They had created like an entity, and then boom, all these different farmers came in. And if you were part of the SNAP program, you would go up to the cashier, get your token, and or buy your food and whatever, then they would fund that out.
Right.
So that was our first like real big EBT, introduction. But after we realized that, like, oh, all these farmers should already have their own machines on all these produce stands and all this stuff like that. So we ended up going down that path. And once you start to really unravel that, you realize that it's any uncooked, unprepared food should be taking an EBT card, period. So you're talking about seafood markets, produce markets. We've got places that do butcher shops. Anywhere that you're selling food should be an EBT acceptor, especially if you're anywhere near any kind of low income area. And most people are at some point. There's, within them, and those guys are going to buy their food somewhere. It might as well be from a small business and not Walmart.
Is cooked food also included in that? Like I think of like I go to my convenience store, right, and look for, get a sandwich or fried chicken or whatever.
So that's actually one of the rules. You're not allowed to do cooked food.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So cooked food is an exclusion. Merchants have to be very careful about that.
Right.
They can't sell other items on that same EBT transaction. So cooked food is one. Paper goods is another. You can't sell paper goods, cigarettes, alcohol.
Obviously,
it's obvious, but
right.
Some of these convenience stores have a small produce set, like the bodega is the idea. We don't really have them down here in Delaware, but
right.
But New York City,
New York, exactly.
Place you would go to the corner market, you could get everything. Those guys should all be, accepting EBT.
Yeah.
So those are some of the limitations. There are some loopholes that, again, we kind of, knock on wood, off the record, kind of stick with some of these guys. So you guys are Maryland area. Mm-hmm. So the common one that we see in some of our seafood clients is you can go buy a bushel of crabs on EBT and then pay them $1 and they'll steam them for you. So that's some of the loopholes we've seen in this situation. Same thing for shrimp, whatever.
So they pay the dollar.
Yeah.
Pay the $1 in cash.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
The steaming fee.
So technically the EBT was used for uncooked food.
Correct.
Right. And then the dollar was to cook it. And so that was separate. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So what other exclusions are there? What else do they need to understand? Because obviously I would imagine that could get a little complicated in terms of what you can and cannot put on these EBTs. So talk a little bit about that and kind of what other maybe, obvious or maybe not obvious restrictions there are.
Yeah. So the ones we kind of talked about, so alcohol, paper goods, cooked goods, stuff like that. Where it gets a little less obvious, it's like, well, what about a cold sandwich? What about prepared? So you run the line, you gotta be careful, but like technically everything in the deli case is okay. So if you're gonna put a ready-made sandwich in the deli case, fine. But technically, if you're making a turkey club and you're selling it as part of a meal, no, it gets a little dicey, on that kind of stuff. So we kind of say, listen, if you're going to put a barcode on it and it's cold, you're good in general, But anything else, we just kind of stick away from it. We really don't want to see somebody who's running like a sandwich shop doing it. Now, that being said, we do have deli clients that do. So if they're coming in and buying a pound of deli meat, cool. Just don't sell your sandwiches on the same EBT transaction. So those are those situations where it gets a little edgy. Some states are a little laxed on it. They'll say, well, it's technically cold, so it's not. But again, we just try and say, be careful with that. The big thing we try and do, and this is, we're kind of going back to our industry. So one of our internal products is a POS system that we actually built the EBT integration for. It's a retail system, so it separates the two. So again, trying to keep it so your cashiers don't make that decision. You ring it all in. Okay, you had $100 in food and this thing of paper towels is $3.99. The system only lets you run the $100 for EBT. You still have a balance of $3 for your paper towels. Now, it's an advantage for a lot of people because a lot of stuff, Square doesn't do this. Square doesn't separate. Square has Tally Pay. You have to like open another app and have another reader for EBT. They don't separate the order into two different ones. So again, if you're going after Square in our industry, EBT is a differentiator. Right. A lot of the retail stuff that's out there, some of the bigger guys don't have an EBT separator either. So again, if you're going after this market, make sure your POS software has some form of way to go, okay, I'm going to tell the system what is and isn't qualified, so my cashiers just don't have to think. Because it is still two, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being two transactions most of the time.
Right. Actually, you kind of answered my next question, which was sort of the technology, because I have noticed a lot that it's a separate terminal for the EBT.
Yep.
and for the traditional forms of payment. And I start thinking, oh my God, that if I was a cashier, I'd be going crazy. Like so talk to that if you wouldn't mind. I mean, is your integrated solution unique, or are there several? And I know what you said about Square, but are there companies
I
out
mean,
there that are
some of the
doing
big
this?
ones don't have it. I mean, and a lot of it's because they're not from the US. So like Vend, Lightspeed, a lot of those foreign companies that are out, they were designed somewhere else and they got kind of brought in. They don't understand EBT because they don't have that in their countries. So we've seen that some of these softwares that have kind of come in under retail don't have it, and it's kind of a niche market when you really think about it.
Sure.
So I mean, there's a ton of retail that just doesn't have the EBT function. So, and all it is again, just separating the two types of products.
Right.
So as long as you have a software that does that, that's step one. Step two is you have to have PIN debit. That's another functionality of that. So you have to have your encrypted PIN pad or an encrypted terminal where that person can put in their EBT PIN number along with their transaction. That credit card machine has to have mag swipe. Again, it sounds simple, but I've started seeing PIN pads go away from mag swipe and only have chip. So a lot of these EBT cards are still on the mag stripe. So that's still something that's out there. And then, the omni-commerce side of things, you can't do EBT online right yet. And that's still something that they're working on. But that's also becoming an issue during the pandemic where you still had to do in-person transactions,
Right.
or they had to call you in and then punch it in the machine via the manual.
Right.
There's no e-commerce for EBT yet either. So all things that are being worked on. But in our space, it's still, like you said, you still see two separate terminals. So again, if you're in the industry and you're walking in, that's a talking point. Hey, I see you have a separate machine for EBT. Why are you doing that? Okay. And in the state of Delaware, I'll use it again as an example, they had contracted it with Wells Fargo and they were charging merchants $30 a month for using that machine. So we were having conversations. Well, does it go down? Who services it? What happens? What do you get for $30 a month? If I charged you 10 cents a transaction, would that be better or worse than your $30 a month? So again, it's a conversation to have, but you can eliminate one piece of hardware. It's kind of the idea of it's like, Uber Eats and all those other guys. The less you have and the more you can consolidate that technology, the better off of those merchants usually.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would imagine for the cashiers especially, that would be a pretty important well, and I think too, even for the consumer, I mean, we haven't really talked about that too much here, but I mean, I think, one thing that definitely strikes me about this focus on EBT is, frankly, it has to feel good to know that you are expanding the options, a lot of times healthier options, less expensive options, to where those who are in need of those services and who are getting these electronic benefits, that they have other options to use. They don't have to just go to the mega grocery store. They can actually, go to the local meat market, that sort of thing, and get that. So I think that's really cool. And I would imagine even for them on the technology side, right, it's probably very confusing to them. They're, in most cases, maybe they're probably not trying to use it in a way that's fraudulent, right? They want to use it correctly. And so when they come up to the counter, it'd be great to know, okay, you're ringing everything up, and the things that are qualified, I'm going to pay for with EBT, and the things that are not qualified, I'm going to pay for separately.
Right.
Is that what you're noticing, that there's kind of that need in the market to understand that rather than just leaving it up to the cashier to guess which thing goes where?
It's definitely it's an expertise that if any of our merchant salespeople could learn, they could go in and take some advantage of.
Yeah.
I would say there's still an opening in that market because nobody's really talking to these merchants about it.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. I mean, I think the only thing I would say is that there's not a lot of money in it for us as an industry, but you get the processing usually along with it. So this is one of those it's like kind of like gift cards. You don't make a ton of money on gift cards, but you come in with them because you get the rest.
Right. And because once they sign up for the gift card program, or in this case, the EBT program, your attrition is going to be next to zero because it's rather difficult to switch, especially if you have a unique technology solution like what you're describing. So let's revisit the fee structure real quick. So let's get specific for our industry for a second. So to clarify, there's no interchange. There's nothing like, kind of the Amex Blue or the VMD interchange. There's none of that. There's no card brand fees and assessments, and there's nothing like that. There's no cost for the merchant whatsoever other than what the processor charges. And the processor is charging what exactly? What's the industry standard? Is there normally a monthly fee?
Usually it's lumped in with your debit auth fee. So whatever you're paying on your Schedule A for your debit auth fee is usually also your EBT
Right.
cost.
Right.
You know,
And what
I
are
would say
what are merchants usually paying though? Like what
10
are
to
they?
15 cents.
Okay, 10 to 15 cents per transaction.
Yeah, and then most agents are making 7 to 10 on that.
Sure.
Okay.
Again, not a ton of money, but
No, but
Right.
it's something.
it's something, you know, and
Sure.
it can be more. You know, I've seen agents charge more because they're offering their expertise and they're helping them do it. So,
Yeah.
but I would say that's kind of the average, and you know that keeps you competitive and still make a little bit of money. So,
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like offering the EBT, I'm sure you have some agents and partners that have done better than others with this.
yeah.
What are they doing? The ones who are being successful, are they, going after specific merchants with this? Are they walking in? Are they like any thoughts on kind of the best way to target merchants with this and set yourself apart with it?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a couple. So I mean, I would say there's like 3 major ways you kind of do it. Not, not to go too long, but mobile is one. You know what I mean? So mobile, you have your farmers markets, your guys like that. You're going, hey, listen, I can give you a mobile credit card machine that also takes EBT. How many farmers markets are you doing? You
Mhm.
know, where are you going? Oh, I go to this one, and this one. Great. If you could take EBT and credit card at that location, and I can help you at your regular stand here on the road, 2 machines, blah blah blah. Again, offering a solution. Oh, that'd
Right.
be great. Cool. Let's switch you over. I'll match your current rates. I'll get you set up for EBT. Oh, you're at
Right.
3.5%. Cool. I'm good. Let's go. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're offering a value add and not worrying about the processing rates anymore. The other one would be moving somebody from a legacy cash register to a POS.
Mm.
Again, that's going to be one of those situations where are you manually doing your EBT? Have you gotten in trouble? Are you worried about your hot food? Are you worried about your paper good? Again, it's more of a scare tactic, but again, you're talking about
But it's
liability,
true.
you're talking about fines.
Yeah.
Right.
This POS solution can help you solve it. I'll help you set it up. Again, I'll match your current rates. Let's take a look. Yep, for this rate that you're currently paying is I can give you the machine for nothing, or I can give you the POS for nothing, or I'm only going to charge you a setup fee, whatever that is.
Right.
And the last piece of that is always going to be the grocery interchange is the special interchange. That's been one of our previous
right,
podcasts
sure.
that we've talked about. Grocery has a cap on debit and a cap on credit once you get a certain size. So again, we come in and go, hey, Mr. Merchant, you're paying 2.5%, 3%. I'll match that rate. But if I can qualify them for the grocery interchange on top of giving them an EBT solution, now I've made the margin difference. And so now we're seeing on some of those deals 130, 140 basis points
Wow.
on top of that. And then you want to flip it even further, go cash discount at 3%, and then your cost of interchange is only 1%. Now you're making
A lot of money.
serious money
Yeah,
on
you could really do
EBT
something.
merchants as well.
Right.
The last little piece, I know you guys talk about ATMs a little bit. Some of these locations are some of the best ATM placements as
bet.
well because you're near Section 8 housing.
Right.
Those EBT cards also act as cash cards often enough in Maryland specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So those are very busy ATMs also because they're coming in and taking their welfare money out.
Wow.
And the same time they're doing EBT, the same time
Right.
so you can kind of loop all that stuff back in. It's all
That's a nice, lucrative
Yeah.
little business. Sure.
Yep.
I think it just speaks to the larger trend that we talk about so much, which is that verticalization, right?
Mhm.
And it's about, partners choosing and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to be the person that's going to go after the grocery store, the C store, whatever it might be, and dominate that vertical, and then making sure you have all the pieces. You have the EBT, you have the point of sale system that works well with EBT, you've got the ATM partner, you've got all the pieces and kind of fit that all together. So, Kyle, it's always so interesting talking with you. This is a great topic because it's actually interesting to me. It kind of speaks to the complexity of the payments industry that, still on a regular basis, it seems like once a month we have a podcast about something we've never talked about before. It's like how many years in we are, and we've never talked about EBT. So I really appreciate that. Talk to those who are listening right now that maybe have an interest in working with you or learning more about that. What kind of partners are you looking for? Do they need to be geographically located near? Like, give us a little idea of what you're looking for and then tell them how they could reach out to learn more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the biggest one that we actually do a lot of work for a lot of so our POS is processor agnostic. You have to pay a gateway fee and buy the hardware from us, but it's our EBT POS, so they can reach out to us about
cool.
that. And then we also are always looking for W-2 reps for our bank programs as we continue to expand that. We're actually going national with that next year, so
Awesome.
always looking to talk to people about that. So for me, if you just want to email me, I'll get you in touch depending on which one you're interested in. Let me have a qualifying conversation with the person and then get you in the right department here. My email is kmorgan at mpiprocessing.com. That's probably the best way to get hold of me, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kyle Morgan from Mercantile Processing.
Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much for your insights. As always, a pleasure having you on the podcast again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening. James, I guess got an announcement today that really piqued my interest. NMI, our sponsor, is acquiring Agreement Express, which is, of course, is a SaaS solution for underwriting and onboarding. I think this is incredible news. I shared it with you just before we started the podcast. It's sort of like, that's like, in my mind, probably the one little hole that existed in this omnibus solution set. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I mean, I've had so many conversations with BJ over the years, and I think his vision that is just so relevant for our audience is that, there's this PayFac experience that exists with Square and Toast and Stripe and all these others.
Right.
And, it's this idea of setting up payment processing accounts easily, instantly, in a lot of cases, having this integration with the technology. And the idea is there's only two ways the ISOs are going to get that. They're either going to get that by investing in the technology themselves.
Building it all from the ground up.
Right. Or they're going to use a processor agnostic solution, of which right now, frankly, I think there's like one, and that would be NMI combined with Iris combined with Agreement Express.
Right.
And so Agreement Express was kind of that missing piece where they needed the underwriting flow that would make this all work. And so I'm really excited about it. I think they're going to do some fantastic things with Agreement Express.
And I think it's really interesting because, the Iris acquisition was at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Agreement Express at the end of the year, sort of bookended 2022, I think, perfectly for them. So,
and now I think as you go to 2023, I really believe we're going to see them driving a lot of efficiencies with removing friction. Like right now, the hardest thing I think for NMI, frankly, is that they don't control all the friction.
Right.
Some of the friction comes from, FIS or Fiserv or TSYS or Global or whoever's actually doing the underwriting or whatever. But now they can work with these partners where they already have these integrations through Iris. Now with Agreement Express, it's going to turbocharge that a bit, and they can begin
speed
to
it all up and
streamline.
Right. Because I mean, isn't that really the whole concept of it taking so long? Underwriting, I've heard, a week to 2 weeks it can take sometimes. Right?
It can. I mean, now most good underwriting departments are taking a day or two. But even that though, there's a humongous difference between it taking 2 hours and taking 2 days.
Exactly.
Just as far as the flow of things. But it's not only that. It's not only about the delay. It's also about the integration with technology and saying, once the account's approved, what happens next? And what NMI is trying to do is to make it to where the thing that happens next is that whatever the software was that it's integrated with just automatically starts working.
Right.
Versus there's this whole VAR sheet and you fill out all these forms and, it's like, so they're trying to streamline that entire process through Iris. And I think Agreement Express fits perfectly into that. So very excited to see. So head over to nmi.com. That's nmi.com. Or you can also head over to Iris, IRIS CRM.com as well to check out those companies and learn more about the Agreement Express acquisition. So Patti, today in the questions from the field, I want to talk about next action steps. And next action steps are the key to productivity for both agents, recruiters, and agent support people trying to activate agents. And it's the key for those who are trying to sell merchants, trying to sell software solutions, whatever it is. Regardless, when you're trying to get people through a process, you need next action steps. Now, when I say next action steps, Patti, what everybody thinks about is, oh, I have those. Follow up with Susan on Tuesday.
Right.
All right. That is not a next action step.
No, it's not.
The key to a next action step is we have to have an honest dialogue of communication with the people that we're trying to get them to move forward in the process. We need them to share enough information with us so that we know what their plans are. We know what they're planning to do. So I had a really interesting experience recently that I'll share. I can't give too much detail, but I was working with one of my large consulting clients. It's a really big point of sale company, and they have a direct to agent program. And so I was talking to their team about this idea of next action steps, and we kept seeing in the system next action steps like, follow up with Bill, or Bill's thinking about it, or, Susan is looking over some things or whatever. And these are like, I'm like, no, these are not next action steps. I'm like, I need to explain. So what I did was I actually reached out to 5 of their resellers that they had recently signed up that hadn't done a deal yet. And I said, I'm going to record. And so I got them to agree that each of these resellers, that I would give them a free 30-minute consulting call if they'd let me record it and share it with the team at this point of sale company.
Okay.
So I reached out and I recorded these 30-minute Zoom sessions where I was talking to the reseller as if I was the recruiter / agent support person. And I shared it with the team, and it was really insightful, I think, for them, because we started the conversation of me just talking to them and saying, tell me about why you're doing this. Why are you selling to this point of sale company? There's a million other things you could sell. What's the particular reason or passion behind this? And so we're having this open dialogue in this conversation, and I just kept probing and, genuine curiosity. Right. And so they were finding that really interesting. And then I would say, okay, great. So where are we at in the process? I know it sounds like you're really a good fit for this, and I don't think you've placed a deal yet. Do you have one in mind that you're interested in placing right now? Or like, where are we at in the process? And then it was like, oh, well, I have this one merchant that I really think is going to be a great fit. Oh, awesome. Or it would say, well, I haven't got out in the field and started it yet because I don't have this marketing material piece, or because I'm unsure about this one area of the training or whatever. Right. So then all of a sudden we start to identify the true next action steps, which are only going to come from dialogue. I could have easily ended there and, let's follow up. And it's like, no. Then I took the last 5 minutes and say, okay, let's clarify a couple of things. So first of all, you need these 3 things. Let me write this down. I'm going to make sure you have all 3 of these things by the end of the day today, and let me write them down. So you need this, and you have this. Now let me clarify. You're saying if I can get you all 3 of those by the end of the day today, when do you plan to go out and start prospecting? Well, I plan to go out Monday. Okay. So I'm going to have somebody follow up with you Monday around 4:00. You think you'd be done prospecting by then? Oh yeah, I'm going to go in the morning. Okay. Maybe we'll even do 2:00. So 2:00, someone is going to reach out to you to see what questions you have after your first day of prospecting this coming Monday from 9 to 1. That is the next action step.
Right.
And then the key is you then have to continue having next action steps. So you have that one, then you got to do the next one, right? So when that's done, you say, okay, great. You went prospecting. What happened? Well, I got these 2 people that are interested. Okay. Do they need a demo? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Do you already have one set up, or do we need to work on? No, I don't have it set up. Okay. Do you want to call them today? And let's talk about by the end of the day today what the schedule is, right? So it's a constant communication back and forth with honesty and transparency. Same thing when you're selling a merchant account. If they're not even willing to share with you their true objection, you might as well not put them in your pipeline. You don't have a real next action step.
Right. No next action step, no prospect, right?
No prospect. I like that. Yes. And, well, let me think about it. No, I mean, I wouldn't just say no, but I mean, that's to me,
you think.
No,
sure.
I'm not going to put you in my pipeline if you want to think about it. That's not a next action step, is you thinking about it, because they're not going to take that action. We all know that.
Right.
So the question is, well, I really appreciate you considering it. Right. But before I go, let's dig a little deeper, because I want to understand what the concern is, or what you're thinking about, so I can be better prepared for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about? What do you think of it so far? What's your kind of initial impression? And then they give you the details, and then oh, okay, now I know what I'm up against. Now maybe you push forward with a sale. Maybe you agree to come back and meet with a partner, whatever it is, but you got to know what you're dealing with and have this honest back and forth communication. Right. One of the best ways to do this is to agree on shared objectives. So when you're talking to an agent, you both agree that they want to make a sale. They want to get paid commission. That's a shared objective. Well, what's next on this path to that objective? When you're talking to a merchant, they want to reduce their payment processing cost. Maybe they want to eliminate it. You're doing dual pricing. Maybe like we talked to Kyle today, they want to implement EBT and they want to get that all into their system. That's an objective, right? So what's next on this path to that objective? So last thing I'll share real quick is you need these next action steps that, again, come from this honest dialogue and communication. And then secondly, like you just mentioned, no next action step, no prospect. The idea is, if you're going to have a prospect in your pipeline, they must have a next action step. And if they don't, get them out of your pipeline. They're not interested. Reach out to them one more time. Is what I usually do, and say, hey, yeah, I'm looking through my pipeline here of people I'm trying to work with, and I'm realizing that I actually don't have any action that I know of that I can take with our relationship at this point. I feel like we kind of reached the end of the line here. We're at a point where either you're going to move forward with me or you're not. And I can certainly appreciate either one of those decisions. Obviously, I want your business. I'd love for you to work with me. Are we going to work together, or should we just call it quits right now?
Right.
I've said that to hundreds and hundreds of people.
Fish or cut bait, as my father used to say.
Exactly. Yeah. So establish your next action steps. Have honest communication, hold yourself to a higher standard in terms of, if somebody's going to be in your pipeline, you have a legitimate next action step, you have a real, honest, transparent dialogue with them, and you've mutually agreed of what's going to happen next. And if you don't have that, cut them loose, move on to the next one, so you can provide a great experience to the people who are actually interested, rather than a mediocre experience to everybody.
Yeah. Great advice. Thanks, James.
Thanks.
So James, I know this is not like directly related to merchant services, but I thought this week I'd touch on the big crypto news of late.
Oh, sure. I think it's
Notably,
becoming more and more related.
more and more. It is indeed. And, the recent collapse of crypto exchange FTX,
Yeah.
which until its demise was considered one of the largest and most reputable players in the market. Of course, now it's seeking bankruptcy protection after the exchange experienced the crypto equivalent of a bank run.
Yep.
Users are believed to have lost billions of dollars in crypto assets. All kinds of individuals and organizations have been caught up, and there's been a cascade of bankruptcies. Like BlockFi, which is a crypto lender that was heavily exposed to FTX. Before its implosion, FTX was valued at $32 billion.
Wow.
Had high-profile backers like SoftBank and Tiger Global, as well as celebrities like Tom Brady and the tennis pro Naomi Osaka.
Yep.
The European Central Bank, which is the EU's version of the Fed, estimates that venture capital firms had 17.9 billion in Bitcoin investments as of July.
Wow.
Yeah. Like other crypto exchanges, FTX operated outside the traditional banking system, so there were no requirements around transparency or risk management.
Yep.
And of course, lately, market risks have manifested in plummeting values of cryptocurrencies across the board. On today, the day that we're recording this, Bitcoin is valued at 17,000. That's down
from what,
75% in a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
The European Central Bank has likened Bitcoin to a game of chance. In a blog post in late November, they characterized the fact that it stayed at 17,000 for the past several months as, quote, an artificially induced last gasp before the road to irrelevance. Pretty strong words for a regulator. Of course, they didn't offer any evidence of price manipulation or anything, but clearly that's the feeling. Yeah. And they're not alone. I mean, regulators all over the world are talking about drafting rules for the crypto world.
Yeah. Well, I think isn't it exceedingly ironic that the only thing at this point that can save crypto is regulation.
I know, right? Isn't that's exactly the point I was going to get to, James, because, the crypto industry emerged as an alternative to the legacy financial system.
Right.
Following the Wall Street collapse in 2008, the idea was to create a system that wasn't caught up in the high risk practices of a small number of powerful firms. And guess what happened?
Yep.
I read one report, it just blew my mind. It said that the trading volume of cryptocurrencies on Binance, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure. It was $4.9 trillion year to date as of early November. That's one cryptocurrency exchange. That total exceeded the combined total of 7 of its closest competitors. Of those 7 closest competitors, FTX was number 6 on the list. And the popular exchange Coinbase was 5th. Yeah. So both of those are pretty well known and pretty popular. So it gives you an idea of the concentration of power,
Yeah.
And I just think that, right now here in the U.S., there's going to be a hearing in Congress over the FTX collapse, December 13th. Both the SEC and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission are pushing for regulatory authority.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Sam Bankman-Fried, who was the guy that ran FTX, was a big proponent of empowering the CFTC to regulate crypto exchanges. Although I doubt that his exchange would pass muster,
Well, again, though, the interesting thing. So I actually, Jack Christensen, my business partner, he's very much tuned in all of this. And so he actually sent me quite the interesting exchange that Sam Bankman-Fried had with the different reporters. And now that he's kind of out of the company, he is really somebody needs to get some duct tape put over his mouth.
That's exactly what I was just
I
going
mean,
to say.
he's just walking himself right into prison at this point.
He really
But
is.
But he just said some outlandish things and some pretty insane things. But yeah, I mean, he basically has said that all of that he talked about of the regulation and all that was all just bogus. That was all just to make it seem more legitimate. But yeah, I feel like every word out of his mouth makes people like him less at this point.
He's sort of like the Elon Musk of crypto.
Well, no, he has the the raw intellect to where he feels like a bit like an Elon Musk, but he doesn't have the operational capabilities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think I actually made a post on LinkedIn last week where I was talking about, just because you have a business idea, that doesn't really mean anything. You have to have the experience and the resources to execute on it.
Well, and that's it. I mean, when I was saying about him being like Musk, it's just in terms of what we used to in the old days call diarrhea of the mouth. Like,
right.
You should just shut up.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know. I agree. And I think what's interesting though is, generally speaking, with Elon, he has what he's saying, he has a purpose. His purpose may be ill-intended, but he's saying it for a reason. This guy's just an idiot at this point.
This guy trying to be like that, but
he's extremely smart. But just because you understand mathematics doesn't mean you know how to run an operation with billions of dollars.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, just because you're a genius doesn't mean you can run a company.
Yeah, and so he was that was kind of the issue there, and so I'll be very interested to see how it pans out. I mean, I could definitely see him spending some time in prison over it, but we'll see.
Oh, I could definitely. And what was interesting is I have that's one of the things on my news feed, and it was interesting today, because I get these, obscure things.
Right.
And one of the obscure news items I got today was the woman that was his one-time partner she was spotted at a coffee shop in New York City that's around the corner from the U.S. Attorney's Office. This morning.
No coincidence there, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. But I think I'm still bullish on crypto in general, long term, as far as the technology that underpins it.
Technology, yeah, sure.
But I think, I think a lot of I just feel like crypto has just not delivered on any of its promises. It really hasn't.
No, it really hasn't.
There has to be a pretty significant shift in order for it to really gain momentum again. So we'll see how it goes.
And I think that it kind of reminds me of like metals were in the 70s and the 80s. Everybody was like, oh, this is going to be, go invest in gold and metal,
Right.
And, and that kind of fell by
it basically, it's like that if the thing you were buying was air.
Right.
Yeah. Because at least when you bought gold, you got gold. I mean, the price might have plummeted, but you knew at some point you had the thing that you bought. With crypto, it's like, what did you buy exactly? So, So
it'll be interesting. And like I said, I mean, we've talked here. We've had, a couple of episodes where people, they're doing it to POS. I see it. I see it. The technology is being viable. I just think that, a lot of the hype, has gotten these people in trouble.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks for the update.
And it is interesting that, here we are, here's a system that was created to avoid regulation, and now they're crying for regulation.
Yeah. Yep. Good stuff, Patty. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, James.